Hello and welcome to Senior to Scratch. Well, today I decided to take the ultimate plunge, online golf lessons. The reason I've done so is because I think I need a more thorough analysis of my swing, and it's just not financially feasible to do that over a course of several lessons when I do it in person. I was scouring YouTube and I stumbled upon a gentleman out of the UK by the name of Giles Gill. He's got excellent content that resonated with me. So upon further review, I discovered he was a coach and he could do some online coaching for me. And we had a 15-minute consult. I basically told him what I was trying to do, get to scratch from roughly a 4 index. I had a low inside takeaway, quite often pushes, hooks, low ball flight, poor compression. And we agreed to go forward with lessons. So I sent him a few videos of down the line and face on so that he could do a quick analysis, and he did a brilliant job. I'm going to share one of those videos with you, and hopefully if there's a lot of interest in this, I'll keep doing this, and I'll keep posting progress via lessons. I'm also going to post Giles's social media information in the show notes below, so please check that out. And without further ado, please enjoy this lesson.
Hi Paul, hope you're well and welcome to your lesson. So thank you first of all for jumping on the call the other days so I could get to know you a little bit more, get to know your game, and also providing details in the comment section down below in terms of what you're going on. Now, in terms of your sort of past lessons, it sounds like you've just been working on depth, and I'm going to show you how today that's actually getting you in a little bit of a sticky situation and actually just give you a lot more structure to your game. Now, the way that I look at golf is, number one, it's a dynamic movement. Everything we're doing is with momentum, it's with athleticisms. It should be seen as like a swing rather than a positional piece. Now, the only time that we're going to look at a positional piece is for either checking things or your setup, because setup is very much a stationary position. As soon as we try and take that club back, we are going to start to move it with momentum. Now, for you, you've very much been taught a push draw, and I don't like to suddenly change patterns massively. So I really like a push draw. I hit a push draw in my game. Obviously, for you being a lefty, that's going to start to the left and come back to the right. Now, the kind of cardinal rule when hitting a draw, so if you just imagine this red line is your flag out there. The rule when it comes to a push draw is it can go dead right. It can go dead left. It can push the ball out to the left. That is absolutely fine. But when it comes to a push draw, the one thing you cannot do is overdraw it to the right. As soon as we start missing the target right of target, when we are trying to hit a draw, it becomes very, very tricky to control, because often that ball is going to land very flat and very low. Now, that's the other thing that you mentioned, is your ball flight tends to be quite low. So let's talk through why this is and start to build you a little bit of a plan here. So the very first thing that I'm going to look at is your setup. So if I draw a line and I roughly match it up with the sort of lean of the camera down from the edge of your shoulders, you can see the edges of your shoulders pretty much line up with your ankles. So to me, that tells me that your upper body is stacked on top of your lower body. Fantastic. That is exactly what we want to see. Now, the next thing I'm going to do is draw again roughly down that same mark, which is going to be about 88 degrees. A line straight down from the center of your sternum and a line straight down from your left armpit. Now, for most golfers, they would position the ball somewhere in this zone. So any shot hit off the ground, whether it be a 3-wood all the way down to a lob wedge, you are going to position it somewhere in this zone. Now, what we never want to see is a ball for anything that's hit off the ground be forwards of the left armpit, because essentially it's going to be too hard to get any sort of compression on it and get your low point past the ball. But we also never want to see a ball that is back of the center of your chest. Why? Because now the ball is going to be too far back in the arc. And if you imagine a swing is like a giant circle. The further back in the arc you go, number one, the higher the club's going to be. So in order to get the club now down to the ball, you're going to have to make a compensation. That could be casting, that could be anything really, scooping, early extension, things like that. Or if you do make contact with it and you do those things, you're going to hit the ball way earlier on in the arc. So the ball's going to come out lower. You're going to hit more in to out. So this is going to promote more blocks and snap hooks. And ultimately from there, it's just going to be very hard to time. So the first thing that stands out to me here is the fact that you've got a ball that's very far back in your stance, and this matches some of the issues that you struggle with, which is a hook and a low ball flight. So one of the first things that we're going to look to do is move the ball further forwards in your stance. Now, besides that, I like sort of your posture. I think you've got a good posture here. If I sort of just draw my little check on, I go from the tailbone all the way down, and then I go up the lower back here. And you can see you're at about 148. That's pretty much roughly where you want it to be, anywhere from 145 to 150. Spot on. Your balance points are really nice as well, so we can see great balance points there. Overall, the basic thing that I'm just seeing that's slightly off at address is your ball position. Now, one thing that I do just want to sort of point out, we're not going to change it today because to me, changing the grip is sort of a last resort, or it just has to be really, really like, okay, we have to change this grip because it's going to have a massive effect on it. Just changing the grip straight off the bat is not necessarily my favorite thing to do, especially with a golfer of your handicap, because you're so used to swinging the club with your hands on the club in this manner. But what I will say is your trail hand's in a great position. Your lead wrist, however, is very, very cupped. So it has a lot of angle here. If you look at like Hack Motion or any sort of fancy software, they'll call that cupping of that lead wrist extension. Now, here's the thing. The more that that lead hand is in that sort of cupped extended position, the stronger it's going to be. Basically meaning that it's going to promote more of a closed club face throughout your swing. Now, again, to hit a draw, you obviously need to close down the face. Grip affects so many things. It affects how you set the club, how you release the club, all of the different timing points in the swing. So I don't want to sort of change the grip first off, but I am going to explain how you having this grip and then doing your first movement is actually causing an inside takeaway. So we're not changing the grip today. We're just noting that there has a lot of extension in that lead hand at address. Now, if I draw some lines on your body right here, we're going to see what happens in a little bit more detail. So as you take this club back, I know you've been struggling a lot with an inside takeaway. So as you take this club back, you can see nowhere near as bad as it was before, but it's still slightly inside. Now, if I zoom in on your wrist condition here, look at your lead wrist here. You can see your lead wrist is dead flat. So if you started with your lead wrist in a position with a lot of angle, a lot of cup, and then you flatten it, if you grab a club, as I'm saying this right now in the lesson, and you do that sort of in your takeaway, you'll notice it always wants to cause the club to dive inside. So essentially what you are doing is you are taking your wrist condition that you have at address, and you are essentially, which is cupped, and you are essentially flattening it in the takeaway, and as a byproduct, that causes the club to go to the inside. So in theory, either if you want to have a flat wrist in this takeaway position, you need to start with more of a neutral lead hand grip. Now, for now, I'm not going to do that because, like I said, changing the grip is a massive, massive change. It feels horrible and it changes lots of different things. So to start with, we're going to go down the road of, okay, actually, we're going to just understand that it's the change of wrist conditions that's causing the club to go inside. So we're going to try and not change those wrist conditions during the takeaway in order to help you take the club back in a good position. Now, we're going to heavily focus on that and the ball position to start with, because number one, I know the takeaway has been something that you've been really wanting to fix. And number two, the early part of our swing is so important to get right. So it's important that we understand it and understand that actually, okay, no, in a week or two's time, if it's still inside and you're really struggling with keeping some extension in that lead wrist during the takeaway, then we're going to have to change the grip. So it allows us to sort of determine the pathway that we go down. Now, if I take you back from the face-on view to this position, and then we go all the way to the top of the backswing, a couple of things that we see here. So number one, as you go back, you do get a lot of depth. I know you've been working on that a lot. So actually, it's sort of borderline kind of too much. So you never really want to see the butt end of the grip be behind the heel line. And as you can see, you're right on the sort of heel line right there. Now, that is sort of, I know you've been working on it, so it's not really my biggest concern. I would say, look, you don't really need to think about depth. depth isn't really going to help you anymore because you're kind of bordering on too much depth. And another way we can tell that is by your lead arm being lower than your shoulder line right there. But the thing that really stands out to me, and this is where we're going to move on to in the future, so you don't need to worry about it today, but it's just so you know sort of the pathway that we're going to go down, is the fact that you dive forwards. And this is basically a sequencing issue. We're not quite timing our movements. We're getting a little bit too sort of forwards on that lead foot. And it's, as a byproduct, it's causing you to dive downwards. And this is always going to then cause a chain reaction in the downswing. That chain reaction is from the face-on view. You've got to early extend. So now you can see, look, your head's going to back away from that line. Your hips are going to kick underneath you this way. And this is in an effort to create space. So by pulling your head away, it prevents you from fatting it. But you can see as you then come down, because of all of these things added together, your club's coming in really under your hands a lot. And this is where you're going to see, depending on how you time the face up, either a big block out to the left or a hook or a pull to the right. So really, you're just sort of reliant on timing. So for me, there's kind of a whole heap of different things that we're going to be sort of working on, and we're going to do it in sequence. So you can see here, there's quite a bit of a flip on the way through. Now, as much as I've sort of outlined kind of the whole plan that we would go through, I'm not expecting you to change all of this at once. And to be honest, you'll be working on this for ages. The key is that you know, when you go through this plan that I'm going to lay out, is that when you fix one part of it, you are going to be setting off a positive chain reaction that is going to be helping you hit the ball better. So you don't need to fix all of it to see better results. If you just fix one at a time, you will naturally start to see you'll hit the ball better. So this is what we're going to sort of work through today. We're going to understand this a little bit more, and this is what we're going to talk about in the final video. So the first thing that we're going to talk about is number one, ball position, and number two, the takeaway. Then from there, once we've gone through those, have some time to practice it. Let me know how things are going. If we're still seeing the takeaway go inside, or it feels completely unnatural to try and keep some cup in that lead wrist, then we can move down the pathway of having more of a neutral lead hand, and that will then give us a different way of tackling the takeaway with some good results. So again, there are options here. Let's jump over to the final video and let's go through sort of the first part of today's lesson, which is, or first part of our plan, which is ball position and the grip and how it relates to the takeaway.